going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now,
Jimothy.
So ladies and gents, we are here back with another discussion, and I'm going to be somewhat replying to a video that was made by Fabs. Now Fabs is another YouTuber that I know, and he made a video on the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh right now, and he made some very valid points in his video, and he spoke very coherently about the state of Yu-Gi-Oh currently and a few problems that he foresees. Now I'm going to leave a link in the description for you guys to kind of check out his video, which will give this video a little bit more context in terms of my discussion and my standpoint on it. So I'll leave a link in the description. Go and watch that video, ladies and gents, and then you can find yourself back here to kind of see what I feel about what he said and my thoughts on it. Now, giving you a quick overview, Fabs did touch on the generic splashability of just generic boss monsters in any archetype, which I myself agree wholly with. Seeing just generic boss monsters or generic enablers, for example like Predaplant Verte, Anaconda, Christian Halki Fibrax, which are just notorious at the moment, having those cards being able to be splashed into any deck makes for some weird deck building, and it kind of takes away the uniqueness of the archetype. Now I did touch on this previously before in a previous video, but I didn't really expand on it. These generic boss monsters are a problem in my opinion. It kind of takes away some of the deck's weaknesses, which is what Fabs was kind of trying to state in his video. Being able to cover the weaknesses of a deck with a generic boss monster is a problem. For example, he touched on Sky Strikers being able to go into Access Code Talker like with a normal summon, and like, I don't know, a Hornet Drones for example. Being able to do that, I think, is crazy. It takes away the fact that Sky Strikers is a mid-range grindy deck that tries to out-resource you, and it has problems getting over big monsters. Having the ability to access Code Talker at the drop of a hat just means you've kind of covered all bases, which means it takes away from that archetype's kind of like identity, as well as just giving it just a crazy power output. Now I feel very strongly on this, especially playing Evil Twins for the last like month or so, taking it to a couple of regionals as well as a couple of locals. That deck specifically is an in-archetype deck. It tries to play its own way in terms of like being able to stick with its own archetype. Yes, you can splash a few things in here or there, but for the most part you are playing an engine, and the engine is what is going to be able to win you games ultimately. However, when you're seeing decks like, I don't know, Cyberse Outlich for example, which can just splash a generic boss monster in or a generic enabler to end on like, I don't know, a Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer for example, and then Cyflock you out the game, I think it's absolutely crazy, especially when Outlich in of itself is a back row strategy which looks to just basically stun your opponent out the game and out resource them using their traps, not being able to combo off for like 5 minutes and then still end on all their traps, which I think is crazy. And Konami, for the most part, I've been promoting these kind of generic cards because these cards sell, believe it or not. I'm just thinking about Therions for example. Like Therions in of itself at the moment, they're a deck that's coming out in Dimension Force, and already people are splashing Therions into like Earth Machines, into Sunvalons. I was even looking at it myself, I'm not gonna lie, because it's the most effective strategy available. Do you know what I mean? It's meta for a reason, and it makes sense to be able to put these powerful cards into an already existing archetype to boost the archetype's overall power. It does do a good way with roll decks, but it skews deck building. On the other end, you're just getting a lot of these pile 60 card decks which don't necessarily have an identity. They just facilitate boss monsters being produced efficiently, which again, what Fabs was saying, and which I wholeheartedly agree with. You need to have a few monsters that are unique to the archetype, which are only summonable within their own archetype, so to speak. So being able to just access just crazy easy to make boss monsters, I'm thinking even like Unchained Abomination, which does have no stipulation at all to do with this archetype. It just requires a link monster, which is laughable at best. Appaloosa, again, you just need 2 link monsters to be able to make it, which I think is just absolutely crazy. It's a powerful card, it is balanced, but when it's mixed with other strategies and archetypes that can just facilitate Appaloosa, as well as ending on 2-3 other forms of interaction, it kind of just takes away at the essence of an archetype, which is something that I really agree with, and it's something that Fabs pointed out in his video. Now, I think the main reason for this, and this is just my own thoughts, ladies and gents, is Konami seems to be at a critical mass in terms of unique card design. Now, there's always going to be some outliers. There's always going to be a few cards that are produced that are just unique and just standalone compared to all the other cards that are out there. But for the most part, you're seeing a few cards that kind of like mirror cards that already exist. And because of that, they're having to power creep cards that already exist to be able to create new and interesting ways to interact with your opponent, and which leads to no interaction. And the reason I'm saying this is because let's take Borrow Sword as an example. Borrow Sword used to be the instant win button for a lot of decks, especially decks that can spit out a lot of monsters, or even decks that can kind of like set up a board and stun you out of a board and be able to then kill you on the following turn, or their following turn, which would be turn 3. It actually got power crept by access code talker, and I was talking to my friend Levi about this, and this was some time ago when I was kind of just getting back into the game and I started to attend a few locals here and there, and he said to me he couldn't believe that a card like Borrow Sword existed, where you could just have an instant OTK button at the drop of a hat basically. And then when access code got released, he was flabbergasted. He says, I can't believe that Borrow Sword Dragon got power crept by access code talker. Now you've seen people just take access code talker out, Borrow Sword out of their deck in place for access code talker, which is way more generic, much easier to make, and less restrictions, which is just absolutely crazy. At least with Borrow Sword, you had to get another monster on field, and it had to be able to be turned into defense position. Access code talker just states that you target a card that probably was used to make it, it gains attack, and then you can pop cards on the field without your opponent responding, which is just blows my mind. And it's kind of like a testament to where decks are going at the moment. You're seeing main deck monsters that have Omni Negate status, which I think is just absolutely crazy. Some of these main deck monsters are more powerful than like extra deck monsters. I'm thinking of Therion's King Regilex, and I will keep talking about Therion's, but it's kind of fresh on my mind because I was looking at the archetype just like a couple of hours ago. But Therion King Regilex, he can literally do what an extra deck monster does, and there's just no drawback to him. All you have to do is load up the graveyard with another Earth Machine monster or another Therion's card to be able to access an Omni Negation, which is like one of the most powerful forms of interaction in the game, which is just absolutely crazy. Having that resource in the main deck with no stipulation whatsoever is just a sign that we're kind of like getting to a point where else can Konami go with card design? They've pretty much exhausted a lot of the avenues. Now obviously there's still archetypes and a few avenues that they can explore, but for the most part, where else are they going to take this? And I feel like it's kind of rearing its head now in terms of where we were at with regards to like card design and just like generic boss monster splashability. Now the genericness of some of the cards that are being being released can be addressed easily. Just don't make them as generic as they are, in my opinion. Predaplant Verte Anaconda is just a perfect example. Like, why doesn't it require a Predaplant monster just to be able to be in theme with this archetype? I just don't get it. Why does it have any restrictions apart from you can't summon after you've used its effect, which I think is crazy, because more times than not you're using its effect at the end of a long combo sequence anyway, which has like an Omni Negate, a Spell Trap Negate in the process to get into your Predaplant Verte Anaconda. It's just, I think it actually blows my mind to think that there's cards out there that can just do that. Christian Hauki Fireblacks, for example, like, where are we at card design where you're getting a resource out of your deck which enables further plays to access your extra deck and just end on boards which have like 3 or 4 layers of interaction? Now obviously to be able to do this takes some thinking, and it's nothing on the community, it's just a little bit of a spotlight on where we're at in terms of card design. I feel like it needs to be looked at and it needs to be taken into consideration, the nullification of archetypes as a whole, because all we're going to start seeing now is more pile decks, more 60 card pile decks which just contain basically a bunch of good engines which produce the generic boss monsters that we've been talking about. So those are my thoughts on it, ladies and gents. I do have a few more thoughts, but obviously I'm not going to tie it to this video. We want this video to be nice, neat and compact. But what are your thoughts? Get at me in that comment section below. Just let me know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Is it a problem to have all these generic boss monsters and have all these cards that just facilitate OTKs just being able to be accessed by every deck? It might not be a problem to yourselves. If so, just let me know in that comment section below. Anyway, we find ourselves at the end of another video. As always, if you did enjoy this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff, and I will definitely see you guys in the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.